Looking back, I've explained my life. I don't know if I've done it correctly. There's been points in my life that, at the moment, especially when I went to prison last, that I could never imagine this would be anything but a negative experience for me. But then looking back, it was the most best experience. So even when you're going through a difficult period, a difficult time, it's time to grow. There is opportunities to grow from it. There's opportunities to learn, and always know that you're going to look back on these times.
Welcome back to AudioLife Memoirs, the podcast where we tell your story in your voice. I'm your host today, Carrie Purcell, and you're about to hear my conversation with Omar Mentesh, a prisoner advocate and founder of Anna Branch Plus, a transformative organization working to rehabilitate, mentor, and offer employment support for prison leavers. Omar's lived experience in prison as a rehabilitated criminal, which you're going to hear firsthand today, has enabled him to build a unique and impactful organization that bridges the gap between rehabilitation and sustainable employment. With a deep understanding of the barriers faced by prisoners and an education in business and entrepreneurship, Omar has dedicated his career to breaking cycles of reoffending, providing individuals with the skills, confidence, and networks they need to thrive in society. Omar is recognized as a leading voice in criminal justice reform and rehabilitation. He's also a guest speaker, consultant, and mentor, working alongside universities, businesses, and justice-focused charities to create meaningful opportunities for those seeking a second chance. Today, we're going to dig into his real experiences, those forces, those people, those places that help to form and inform who he is today. Omar, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm great. I'm humbled to be here.
Well, I know we've had a brief discussion prior to recording, and I'm so excited to learn more about your story, to dig in. As you know, we're going to take a bit of a chronological approach to start with. So I like to go right back to the beginning and ask you where you were born, and is there a story behind your name?
Okay, excellent. Good question. Well, I was born in an area in central London called Camden Town, and in an actual community in Camden Town called Somers Town, actually, in a residential tower block or an estate we call over here called Levita House. I was born there, and the name Mentesh originates from Cyprus, or actually from the Asia Minor. Actually, historically, it goes back to Asia Minor, and I'm half Turkish, half Irish. So my mum is Irish, full Irish, and my dad is a Turkish Cypriot.
Amazing. That's a great background.
There, Carrie. I went around the woods with that one. But
no, I love what we learned just about the history of people's names, right? A little bit about your family. Sometimes it goes all directions. So that's exactly why I asked. That's perfect. So, okay, so let's stay in childhood. Tell us a little bit about childhood and what growing up was like for you.
Okay. Growing up, my earliest memory is actually one of the most impactful memories I have growing up, because I grew up in Camden Town, and my father worked. He was an immigrant from Cyprus, and my mum was a stay-at-home mum. And I had two brothers. I had two brothers then, and we would run around the estate. And unfortunately, us running around the estate led us to places where we shouldn't be. And at the age of 5, I ended up falling onto an overground train line and was electrocuted. That there led onto a really rocky road ahead. Not only did I have physical scars on my hands and on my head, but I have cognitive issues, so around speech. So I had to have speech therapy, and it impacted my education. And at that point, actually, my memory of home life was, even though I was going through that dysfunction, that actually not a dysfunctional period, it was a catastrophic period in my life, having dealt with that accident. Yeah. Actually, family actually grew around me, so it was a comforting time. But only a few years later, my family unit broke down with a breakdown of my mum and dad's relationship, marriage, and they separated. And that was obviously another big catastrophe that hit my life, and that left us without any positive role models in our life, and that led to a void being there where negative role models actually took over, and at a very young age started to be exploited by people with nefarious desires and needs, and that focus around crime. I have actually a lot of mixed emotions because I have a lot of great memories growing up, especially from the age, like I say, from the age of 5 to 7, maybe 5 to 8. Some great memories of home life. But I think when, the walls start to shake through vibrations of mum and dad arguing, and, you can feel the atmosphere in the air, that build up to the eventual breakdown of the relationship it's toxic, it's anxiety driven. And I think when it does happen, it's a relief because then you don't have to hear it, but then you're kind of on your own. And I think that's led to another long road ahead of trying to figure out who I was. But anyway, I don't want to jump ahead too much. And also for the listeners, viewers, I have ADHD, so it sometimes takes a little while for me to build up in a conversation or when I'm speaking. And also I can lose my train of thought and just ramble on. So Carrie, hold me in there if you need to.
I will help you keep on track, but I will also let you just explore memories as they come up. And you gave us a lot there in actually a relatively short answer, right? So your first memory, but in your life, a kind of a key turning point at 5 years old, right? You had a very traumatic experience that impacted your life. You felt, when we talked about specifically about your family life, your childhood, you felt everybody come around you. You felt that comfort and warmth as they helped you during recovery. But even at those very young ages, we're very susceptible to, the words that you use, some of that anxiety, some of that tension that was building up in your family, particularly between your parents. And when they're the foundation of, again, in your words, our role models, they're that foundation of our life at that stage. When that starts to break down, it also has an incredibly traumatic impact. So, you've given us a lot there. There's the love and comforting side. There's also just the disruption of the foundation. It led you to crime. So tell us, as much as you're comfortable sharing, tell us a little bit about what that actually meant. What kinds of crimes? So you were, 5 to 7 was a happier period. We're getting into kind of that 7 to 9 range. What does crime look like for a 7 to 9-year-old just kind of wandering around your neighborhood?
It's a really easy transition at that age. Paradoxically, I would say, because it stems from, just climbing trees, and especially then there was a lot of dilapidated buildings and warehouses and disused buildings and stuff for you to explore in places that you shouldn't be, but you're not really breaking the law. And I think when you're wayward, a lot of people think, actually, we can use this guy, he can break the car window for us, and we can, and stuff like that. And breaking the car window isn't that far removed from breaking a window in a disused warehouse. And so it starts with that. It really starts out with kind of innocent ways. So, and then, you get this bit of cash, and money is liberation at a young age. You get the things, you get the things that your parents can't buy you, because obviously mum and dad is separated, and, they're both paying their own rent, and there's a lot of issues there. And then my mum has her own mental health issues. And then you build a community outside of your family, which you think is positive. You put misplaced loyalty in other people. And I think it's easy to exploit a young mind who hasn't lived. And I think at that age, my first crime was breaking into a car. It was in Kilburn. I was bunked off school from 8 or 9, and truant. So I think anyone who's not from the UK is being truant from the age of 8 or 9. And we would break into a car. It wasn't successful. We used to steal car radios, and we used to be able to take them out of the car. We used to get like £25-30 for the front part of the radio, and then an extra bit of money for the back of it, and so forth. And that escalated very quickly, to be honest with you. So, well, it feels very quickly. I would say by the time I was 13, I was on the borders of, and I don't want to say professional because it sounds like an ego, and it's not. It was more an orchestrated kind of crime. So by the time I was 13, 14, we had a little gang of wayward guys, and again, I'm jumping forward many years, but looking back now, what I would look at as buyouts. So the main thing that I have in the world that I was in was I was a burglar, I was a thief. I used to break into businesses and commercial premises from a very young age. And I think having a buyout in that sense it is needed. But again, what kind of adult would work with a 13, 14-year-old? And when I'm 13, 14-year-old, I think I'm winning. I've got this adult here who's willing to give me loads of money for these stolen things, and it's cool, he likes me, but being a father now, my son's 6 years old, and the thought of someone exploiting him for any amount of money, there is nothing in this world that I would ever accept that and would be acceptable.
Of course.
So it's personal to me now, for sure, 100%. It's like a Robin Hood fantasy, and you really convince yourself, you actually gaslight yourself from a very young age that society doesn't want you, and in some elements it doesn't. It doesn't accept a lot of kids from underprivileged backgrounds. But you convince yourself that's true. You gaslight yourself to do that, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you only mix with people from that mindset, that you never get to experience anything outside of that community. And I think it becomes a cultural issue then, and then that's passed down to generation. And if I didn't break free and become a father, then I'm sure I would have imparted that cultural curse onto him. And I think it's, if I'm making sense, I hope I am.
You're making complete sense. And some of it we're going to come back to. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, just pulling back to, now I realize your parents are separating, they're figuring out new lives, they're taking on more responsibility that they used to share. How aware are they that you're sort of getting into mischief? Do they know this is going on in the background? Is it just, are all the kids doing it? Does it look,
Good question, actually. Good question. At that point, my mum had a severe mental breakdown. So it's like a severe mental breakdown, not getting off the sofa. My dad also had a mental breakdown, and both of them attempted suicide multiple times. Like it was a very difficult period for them. And I think, yes, they were aware, and not at one point did they ever condone it. At every point, they always tried to do what they could to try and stop us from doing that. But I think it was such a familiar pattern for us at 13, 14, and we're bringing in money, and it was a losing battle for them. And it was very easy for me in my 20s to lay all the blame at them, and I did. Growing up, I laid all of the faults at them, and in true part, it was. They're my parents and they had the responsibility. But now, being a parent and understanding how hard life can be, and if I didn't have the support that I did have in an amazing partner, if that broke down, I wouldn't know what. So it's very easy for me to look at being in that position. But yes, they did know. They didn't know, obviously, the intricacies, not like they're sitting in the room with us while we're making our plans and stuff, but it was very far removed. They wasn't emotionally attached. There wasn't, it was like, it felt like we had parents, but not parents, you understand? It was like they were there as in, and I think the very difficult part, I think, to be honest with you, it was because you're not getting that a lot of emotional support, but there's a lot of guilt attachment, and at times, and I think at times you actually wish that they actually did run away completely and be completely removed, because then you didn't have that guilt attachment to it, and then you're thinking, actually, but so they were there half in our lives, it becomes, it's very difficult. If I'm making sense, I hope I am.
I was actually going to say that makes sense to me. So only one or two more questions in that phase. I know we're bringing up, we're bringing up things that are hard to talk about and hard to relive.
I'm here to speak about this, and I said I'm happy to speak about it because I'm sure it will help somebody who might be going through a similar experience. Yeah.
Exactly. So you mentioned two brothers. Where do you fit? Are you older, younger?
Now I have. Then I had two brothers. Now I have two brothers and one sister. I was the youngest brother at that point, so I was the youngest brother. I had two older brothers then.
Got it.
And I think growing up, actually, they again did everything they could to stop me following the path, because they were involved in crime before me, and I think that was the first entry for me, listening to their escapades, and it sounded so exciting, it just sounded so amazing, and I just thought, and it's sad, I think just before my mum and dad separated, I think about 2 weeks before they actually separated, they were washing car windows all day at the age of maybe 13, and they come home with pizza, and it was just like. And the fact that there weren't no food in the fridge, it was, my dad lost his job, and it was a very difficult time, and it was at that point then I realised actually the family dynamics have changed, that actually, safety and security doesn't really, it's not within my mum's sphere or my dad's sphere, it might be within my brother's sphere, and actually who do I look up to for guidance and support and safety, and then once they getting involved in crime, you're just thinking, actually, it sounded fun, and it was fun. And I'm not going to lie and say that I didn't enjoy it, because I wasn't seeing a victim per se. I was breaking into buildings at night time, so it was easy for me to convince myself that actually these are rich businesses. But anyway, you can see firing away.
Yeah, no, I get it all. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And so your older brothers, they had done this before you. At the time that you were getting active in that early stage mischief, they were no longer like, they were not encouraging you. They were seeing what you were doing and telling you.
Honestly, they used to beat me up. they used to, and they used to try and play mind games with me. I remember once my brother was on the bus with me, and he was saying to me, "Look, you go to school today. I bunk off today, but you go to school today, and then tomorrow you can bunk off," hoping that when I go there, I'll like it. Do you know what I'm saying? He's only 18 months older than me, and then actually a memory talking about him. He's absolutely crazy. He's a funny guy, but he's absolutely bonkers. But what I would say is that, you know, even with him, the impact of all of this is he wakes up in cold sweats. He said to me, "Omar," because we were placed in care for about. I can't even remember. Do you know, I'd say 3 months, but it felt like an eternity. But we was there for 3 months, and he escaped, and he ran away and left me with all the intention of coming back to rescue me, and obviously how can anybody? So he escaped, and he goes to me, "I would never forgive myself for that." He goes, "How can I leave you there?" It was like, "I left you there," and I left, and it was like, "Look, not your responsibility. I'm not your son." Do you know what I'm saying? And even now, he wakes up in cold sweats over it. So I recognise that all of this stuff here, when I work with people, obviously I'm going far ahead, but the people I work with, it's not just as easy as just giving someone a job and saying, "Here you go," tap them on the back. And say, it's not. It's a lot of work to me. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, which is so important. And we're going to dig into that more so that there's just more understanding and clarity around that. So just before we get there, your relationship to school at the time, tell us a little bit about that.
It was very hard. After I had the accident, I had red plastic bags over my hands and to stop them from getting infection. It wasn't now, the doctors actually after it said it wasn't the right thing to do, but anyway, it was, imagine a 5-year-old kid running around school with red bags. It's really difficult. One, I couldn't write, so I was held back. And I had to have plastic surgery on my hands, skin grafts on my hands. So I was held back. By the time I reached junior school, it was just non-existent, to be honest with you. It was just maybe special education, I guess, in America, something like that. It was around something like that, and it was just maybe making cakes and just doing silly things. And when I went to secondary school, which is high school, equivalent of high school, I remember I just couldn't walk into the classroom. I just felt so embarrassed. There's this whole class of this whole diverse group of people, and they just get it, they've got it, and they're making snarky jokes. So when they're doing a thing about, and I didn't even smoke cigarettes then, but they would do they were doing a science class about cigarettes and jokes around. And at that time there, I either had a fight or flight. So I could either smash the class up and fight everyone, or just run away. And I ran away, and I left school at 13 and never went back.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. You mentioned earlier in our conversation that you have ADHD. At what point was it diagnosed? Did you have sort of a name for it?
No, at young, my partner's a SENCO, Special Educational Needs Coordinator. She's sure that I'm on the spectrum, I've got autism, but she said it's very hard to distinguish the stuff you have with the trauma. So it's easy to put a label on something, but the majority of it comes through trauma. And obviously there might be ADHD playing a part, and it might be even an easy way through to me to escape trauma, for me to say it's just my ADHD. I wasn't diagnosed young, it happened older when I was in prison.
Yeah, okay. And I think that's where we're going to go next. So 13, you're not in school for reasons that you well explained. You just you had been held back. You had a lot of you had a lot of reasons why you didn't feel like you belonged in secondary. You didn't go. So had you been caught for anything at that point? And when did you actually go to prison? When were you caught? How did that happen?
Okay, so yes, I got arrested a couple of times before for just petty crimes. So funny enough, actually, I got arrested in the British Museum actually for shoplifting, because that used to be one of my haunts when I used to bunk off school. Funny enough, because where I lived we lived in many places. So the time when I left school, I was living in Holborn, and Holborn is like literally where my home was, my house was. It was like across the road from the British Museum. So when I used to bunk off school, I used to walk back from, I didn't even go to school, I used to pretend I went to school and just hanged around the British Museum. But anyway, I stole some stupid thing from there and got arrested. And another time I got arrested. But when I was 15, I was arrested for trying to break into a back for an off license, just stealing alcohol. And I was sent to prison for 2 months, served 1 month. But honestly, that 1 month, I was sent to Feltham Young Offenders Institute. But it's like, if hell on earth exists, it's in there. It was a place that would be near on impossible for me to describe, for you to really fathom how how barbaric it was, actually, that it was a place where the most broken and traumatized children were housed, and in turn traumatizing each other in the most psychologically damaging ways you can imagine, like constant just verbal attack through windows. And they were actually called window warriors. But I was sent to Feltham. Then I was stuck in a cell for a month of that. There's no television or anything, so you're just stuck in a cell for 23 hours a day. But funny enough, I look back on that, and again, it was one of the most pivotal periods in my life, because it's the first time I ever read a book, and it was The Eagle Have Landed. I read half of it, understood a quarter of it, but I loved it. I understood, actually, now this is why people are reading. This is actually kind of cool. It allowed me to escape that bloody prison cell. It's not like I had an episphany, then I come out of prison, and the kudos of being to jail made me just even more, just like, oh yeah, he's been to jail, let's, so it just propelled me even more forward. It didn't slow me down, it didn't hinder my criminal activities. What it did was, actually, it propelled me forward into a more of a professional way, where I started, to when I come out of prison. Actually, a funny story then, actually, was, so I went to prison then when I was 15, and I come out, I had my 16th birthday. And I remember coming out and going to, because you're 16 and you don't need an appropriate adult to pick you up. You can just leave the prison on your own. So I was released from Feltham and just given a train ticket. And no, there was no one there waiting for me outside. There wasn't no family or mum or dad, it was just me on my own. But anyway, I ended up going to the train station, and it was like, looking back on it, honestly, it's really emotional, because I'm on the train and it's literally like a movie. I'm about to jump on the train, and the other train on the other side pulls up. And who is it? It's my brother Aaron, the one who was in the care home. And he's just there. And all that went through my heart. And I don't even know why I thought, what if I got on that train and he didn't see me? And it was all related around guilt. I had feeling guilty.
Yeah.
And then we see each other, give each other a big hug, and smoked a spliff, and then just went back to just that life. And both of my brothers always were looked out for me. So it was never exploitative from their angle. It was always just, but again, they're doing their things for survival. So of course it was. And then I started dabbling in real professional crime. I started stealing things that were called cannon fireys. So they're servers for broadcast equipment. And I met a guy who owned a printing shop, and because I used to steal Apple Mac computers then, and they were completely different Apple than they were today. They were just like some old white computers. And so I started stealing computer equipment. By the age of 16, 17, I started moving into these cannon fireys, and it exploded then, because then, unfortunately, I have a gift, I guess, through mentoring now, but a gift for leadership. And I was able to, to rally the forgotten and downtrodden around, criminal activities. And it was, if you'd done a movie, it would look innocently. It would be like, you would be cheering for these kids, it'd be like anti-heroes, but it very quickly escalated to, people dying in car chases, and people going to prison for a long time. And then it's just, there's violence involved in that world. So stuff happens, and, and then when you're in that life, you're living in the memory of someone who's died, and you can't give up, because what would they think? And you've got to keep on going for them, and people get killed. And some of my best mates were murdered at a very young age, and it was murdered over serendipity, not anything that we did. None of my crimes were violent. I never sold drugs. I never did armed robberies. My last crime, actually, well, fast forward, and was semi-violent, and I think that's why it was my last crime. But I think that age, it's like, again, it's the gaslighting. It's so easy to just put yourself in a bubble where you're confirming your own biases. Yeah. And then you turn from 16, 17, you turn into 21, and when I'm 21, I'm an animal. I'd run police off the road. I was just chaotic in my 20s. It wasn't James Bond. It was just reckless kids and turned into adults. And then I started stealing broadcast equipment, and that went on for years. Mm-hmm. And again, it's where once I was a young kid exploited, now I'm exploiting other people. And then the cycle has gone around where now I'm looking for younger people I can get to go out and do robberies for me and burglaries for me. I've got this buyer who's buying these broadcast cameras of me and buying these servers of me. Why do I need to get off my ass? Why don't I get these young kids to go and steal for me? It's awful, because it's that whole cycle comes back, and I'm doing the things that were done to me, and I think and then that continues, that goes on, and things you feel invincible. It's so easy in that world to really feel invincible, especially when, but police only have to be lucky once. I've got to be lucky all the time. Police only have to be lucky once.
Yes.
And eventually they arrest me, and I got arrested in 2006 for a conspiracy. It was a £2 million conspiracy, but to be honest with you, the impact we had went into it. I couldn't even put a number on it. And that was for commercial burglaries, and we were breaking into premises across London and the home county, so that's Greater London, places that surround London, and the West County, and I got 5.5 years in prison for that. Well, I got originally 7 years, but I won an appeal because the sentence was too excessive. Retrospectively, looking back, it was transformative, but at the time it wasn't, because it was the first time I picked up a book again. I didn't read since I was 15, and now I'm back in prison again in my 20s, and I've picked up a book, and now I can read. I've done education in prison, and I've educated myself, and I always loved politics, and I've always loved just stuff that you wouldn't think people involved in that world. I love geopolitics, I love archaeology, I love all this kind of stuff. So when I went to prison, I absorbed myself in this. I read, I lived in the library, I became a peer mentor in the ESOL class, which is English speakers for other languages. And I feel like I'm rambling a lot, Carrie, so please tell me.
No, this is, you're not rambling at all. You're telling a very clear path. You've mentioned, so you've had these two instances where, the first time in prison, the first book that you picked up, it sounded like a subject of boredom, right?
Yeah.
You were stuck in the cell, you had no television. Was there any encouragement to get a book in your hands? No.
No.
But it caught you.
You're told about the library. But I think, looking back, reading is the linchpin of rehabilitation, in my opinion. What it does is what the transformative power you get from reading, because you're being rehabilitated without being aware you're being rehabilitated, and in a non-nefarious way. It's not like some MK Ultra trying to brainwash people, but it's you read and you think, and a book is personal to you. But no, there wasn't. But there was on my second run. There was something called the 6-Book Challenge. Funny enough, so there's a charity called the Shannon Trust. And the Shannon Trust is a charity that focuses around, helping prisoners read and write. And I think the average age of a prisoner reading is 11. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done with that. So the 6-Book Challenge, I've seen grown men cry. I've seen grown men with, skinheads and tattoos crying. And because just being able to read letters from their children, it's just transformative. And yes, but on my second sentence, I think what you were saying is I read stuff that I was passionate about. So I started to grow outside of the criminal world. I started to think, actually, there's more to life than this. There's more to life than Camden Town. There's more to life than London. There's more to life than just crime. And it really did touch me, and especially being a peer mentor in an educational setting and supporting people from foreign backgrounds. They're coming from challenges that I'm not. Actually, I'm seeing my own father's journey in some of them, and I'm thinking, actually, there's a story behind me, and actually it's not just a lot of trauma. There's something there. But again, I didn't have an epiphany then. So I come out of prison in 2009 and went back into crime. But I grew so much at that time that I just felt like I didn't fit in with everyone. And I had a rocky few years. I went and lived in Egypt for a couple of years, and that was great. I was there from 2009 to 2011, but then come back again, and funny enough, I was caught in the two revolutions. I just couldn't believe it. So I'm sitting in Cairo. But anyway, I feel like I'm digressing too much into something.
Well, let's go there for a minute. So what did you do? So what took you to Egypt? What did you do when you were there?
Well, I had an uncle who would just say, look, let's come out and stay, get away from that life. And I had a little bit of cash, and I went over there, stayed, and I started actually thinking, actually, I could do some other things. He was selling Egyptian cotton, and I opened up a company called Egyptian Cotton Shop, egyptiancottonshop.co.uk, and I got all the stuff manufactured. I had the manufacturer was there, and it took me ages. I don't know, about 2-ply, 3-ply, or was it 200 2-ply, 3-ply, or 200 thread count, 300 thread count, 1,000 thread count. But anyway, so I got 3 different ranges, spent a fair bit of money getting them all sorted, and the revolution kicked off, and it was just drama. Come back to the UK, and I thought I need an influx of cash. How can I get money for the business? And in that time there, I had no buyers. So I went sat outside of my circle and reached out to somebody who might have some so-called jobs, and there was a jewellery shop, and we went and broke into a jewellery shop in Exeter, which is about 200 miles away from London, so it's a fair distance, to travel, and drove down there. I got away with the crime, felt invincible. Bloody hell, look at me, I can do anything I want. Ended up getting arrested. But actually, funny enough, and when I was driving to do the job, I actually looked to my left, and actually I see Exeter Prison, and I'm sure everyone would say it. I thought, you're going to be in there. You've looked at it, and you're going to be behind them walls. And got away with crime. And then 4 months later, I got arrested for it over just a load of stupid evidence that we left behind. And I'm happy I did get arrested. One, I'm happy I got arrested. One, because it allowed me to change, but two, more, I deserved to get arrested. They should give me 2 years more. I got 8 years for it, but there was a person in the jewelry shop. The plan wasn't, yes, Carrie, the plan was break into the jewelry shop in between them putting out the watches and then being in the back of the shop so we wouldn't see anyone. Yeah. And just again, but it didn't turn out. Like, there was someone in the shop, and I gaslighted myself at that time there that they weren't in fear. But how could you not be in fear? You've got these men storming through the shop. Of course you're going to be in fear. Yeah. And I was given 12 years, but a third taken off the sentence for pleading guilty at first opportunity. So I was given 8 years to serve 4 years. I served 4 years of that sentence, and I never looked back since then. The second I went into prison, like I said, because I was I keep on saying, like I said, it's a new thing. I was like dictatorial, I guess. I became a black minority and ethnic rep in Exeter Prison, and again, I'm supporting people from challenging backgrounds in a really difficult prison where 99% of the prisoners are white. Exeter is a really predominantly white area, and so supporting people from it was challenging, but I loved it. I thrived. I moved from that prison to multiple other prisons, and each one of them were just violent. Honestly, it was a difficult period because I had the paradox of one, growing in myself, but being immersed in this really violent environment of people just being harmed physically and traumatically around me. So again, but reading, education was really key to that. I've done an open university course. I done multiple vocational courses, a lot of courses that focus on my offending, so like victim awareness. I did a couple of victim awareness programs and enhanced thinking skills, and just read so much that when I did come out of prison that time, that I was just so much of a different person that I just couldn't be around the people I was before. And I grew so much that when I met my amazing partner who I'm with now, and who's the mother of my son, my first and only son, I was able to connect with her in a way that I wouldn't have been able to connect with. I was able to connect with people and have a breadth of understanding around the world, around myself more importantly, that I'm able now to connect with people. And I think, being in prison for 4 years, 2 months, it's a very long time to be sitting in a cell. You get to find yourself. I think you either lose yourself or you'll find yourself. And thankfully I found who I am, and yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So a lot that you just shared there. It's interesting. During a lot of kids will have a part-time job early on, right, to try to get the items they want. You did in a sense, but it was through crime. Through that, you learned how to find buyers. You learned how to broker deals. You learned how, you said that you were a bit of a leader in the group, and then eventually you learned the way that the whole operation worked. And as you got older, you ran, in essence, you ran an operation where you would also go and recruit in younger members and have them do the same, activities that you were asked to do at that age. You had these, a couple of pivotal moments for yourself where you were stuck in a cell. You found your hands on a book. Your mind got to explore things outside of the world that you knew, which I think many people, whether they've had your exact experience or not, can understand how small the world can be in the mind of a child, in the mind of a teenager. And, even if you know that you're stuck in a situation, you can't see the world outside of that, right? You don't know how to get out of that. And so you started to learn, see things in books, learn things outside of your world, get ideas. When you went to Egypt, you took those actual entrepreneurial skills that you had practiced and turned it into, or started steps towards turning that into a career that, a career outside of crime, and a career that you could actually build. But when you looked for that seed money, the only way that you knew how to do that was to go and raise the funds the way that you'd always done.
Yeah.
So, a lot of learning, some of it, as you said earlier, exploitation, of young children to get you there. But a lot of it was you using your intellectual abilities to learn the process, to see how it worked, to be able to execute on it. You also noted in prison multiple times you took the role of a mentor or a peer mentor. Tell me how those, you had those leadership skills, but tell me how that came about.
Okay, the first one came about when I was in prison for the first main sentence, and that was for the conspiracy. And I was in education, and I used to get along with the teachers in there. And funny enough, a job come up with a cleaner in education. So I was a cleaner in the education department. And Mike, who was in the math class, I'm rubbish at maths. I've always been rubbish at maths, but I've always been great at speaking to people. Oh, I don't know if I am now. Everyone be judging me thinking they can't even listen to me. But anyway, I used to always like speaking to people, and I love English, and I think he just said, "Would you love to do this?" And he gave me an opportunity. I thought he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. The second opportunity came about, I think, through serendipity. I'm in prison in Exeter and looking for jobs to do, and I think they're always the prime jobs to get, because you get a lot of freedom in the prison. So, so it was for selfish reasons initially that I joined it. One, it gives me more time out of my cell, it gives me more spending money, but it ties into my character. And only when I got into it, my mate, who was a colleague of mine, used to come out every cell, and he used to do it jokingly because he used to be a bit of a funny character, but actually we took it on board. He used to come out with our little folder. We're coming out to save lives today. Honestly, you're walking into someone's cell who's you don't know what they're going through. And so I've been into people's cell whose, their children have died, or their mum has died in another country, or they're facing immigration issues, they're being deported, or honestly they didn't commit the crime, they were duped. There's so many foreign nationals who are duped. They don't know the process. It's so easy for them to say, "Oh, you can send something to my address. Send your toys to my." I was always toys, honestly, every one of them, it's trying to support someone through that period is very difficult, and I think it's a great responsibility, actually. And I understood that actually everything that I'm saying to people, I've got to really be true in what I'm saying, and I've got to make sure that any advice that I do give them. So at times, funny enough, I used to use translation books of English to. There was two key memories I have. There was two Vietnamese gentlemen and a Chinese guy. And I actually used the English to Chinese, English to Vietnamese translation book to communicate with them, just to get through the basics. And I used to scream at officers saying, "Please, can you give me a pack that has a translation?" And they wouldn't give it. And I was saying, "Well, I'm having to run to the library now for each person to get a new dictionary." And it was, so a lot of the stuff I had to create of my own.
Wow. So you have that. So, I mean, that's amazing. So sure, you can say that there was a bit of self-interest to get out of the cell, to get a bit of cash, but really you had all of these barriers that you were overcoming, including communication. But it sounds like, I'm still hearing in your stories that you really learned so much about their journey, that you were able to empathize with what they were experiencing, which, while there may or may not be parallels, it was very different than the experience you had had.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. Because I really come to understand, one, the selfishness of my own behaviour. Because a lot of these guys wasn't criminals per se, they committed a crime. But I was a criminal. I was living a life of crime. And I understood actually the selfishness of my own actions. And also for me perpetuating the life of misery. Some of these people were fathers, and it brought to start that actually how easy it is to find up in a place like that. But I think the key thing I took away from it is how selfish it is of my behaviour, because the humiliation they felt that they'd been to prison, I didn't feel. So a lot of them felt like actually going back to their country, they're going to be humiliated, and it's a stain on their character. Well, I didn't have that going back to my community.
Yeah. And
that was an alien thing to feel. You're thinking, well, it's a good, it doesn't mean nothing. It doesn't mean nothing going to prison for me, but it means something for you, and why is that? And actually, they have a community to care about them. A role model is a big thing, to have, and if you have that attached to you, it's the same. And I think, and that's when I really come to understand actually the problem that we have. It's a cultural issue, and I'm not talking about race or ethnicity. A culture of the mind. We've got subcultures within the UK, and even subcultures within criminality. There's a big distance between an armed robber and a commercial burglar, to then a drug dealer, to then someone who does fraud. These are multiple different people doing different crimes, and their impact on the community is different, and their life within the community is different. And I think, and what gravitates them towards crime, it's so nuanced, and that's what I can't understand. It's poverty plays a part, but it's not the be all and end all. Homelessness plays a part, it's not the be all and end all. It's actually the internal fight that people are having, and it's how people view themselves. Is that why are people happy and content to keep on going back in and out of prison all the time? Why was I content with doing that? Why was I content? Because being in prison is the most boring, most depressing thing you could ever go through. And the fact that we willingly put ourselves through that, and when you actually break it down, I would have been better off going to work for KFC. I would have made more money. It was because on the surface it's a big lump of cash, but when you break it over 4 years, it's nothing. It's pennies.
Yeah.
And it's a realization when you work in a role like that. I think you're forced to actually see the humanity in other people. Even at that time, that I didn't. It's because I weren't able to test the waters with how I am. I still had the whole intention of committing crime when I was coming up, because I didn't know anything else. I've done all these courses, but in the back of my mind I'm thinking, yeah, that sounds great, but you're going to have to fall back on that, because everything's going to fall apart and you're not going to get there. And crime has always worked for you. It's always put money in your pocket. It's always got you what you needed. And then I come to realize actually the world, I'm underselling myself. Actually, I can do a lot more things outside of the criminal fraternity, and I don't have to stop being a criminal per se. I've just got to stop breaking the law, because the things that make me a good criminal, what an oxymoron. Well, what make me a successful criminal, I should say, is could make me a great peer leader, could make me a great CEO, could make me a great why not? And now once I had that realization in myself, and I really believe that my whole mission in life was to go back into the community, to everyone that I left behind, to reinforce that within them, to say, these big shiny buildings, they belong to you, these museums belong to you, these galleries belong to you.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be excluded from them, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be the next CEO. And it's even how long and crazy my journey has been. My flipped my whole life around in ways that people couldn't imagine. I'm off to the House of Lords for the second time on the 20th of this month. The House of Bloody Lords. Jesus Christ! I thought they would put me in there for execution. Back in the day, not to go there. To speak about the journey I'm on, and it's amazing.
It's incredible.
And now for a word from our sponsors. Ready to share your stories and life philosophy, or capture those of a parent or grandparent? Or maybe a corporate package is right for you to build connection across your workforce and add value to your clients. Visit audiolife.io today to learn more. Our listeners will get 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. AudioLife, where memories find their voice.
So I know there are a couple of key things coming up in your story. I know that fatherhood was a big change. I know that you met a partner who was really, again, you were in the right mindset, and this was a very healthy partnership. Today, one of your titles is prisoner advocate, and we've sort of been tracking the journey to get there. So talk to us about how you actually made that happen, and we can pick up on some of those points around your personal journey as they impact it.
Yeah, it's I think I've used, if I'm ever going to do an autobiography in my life, it would just be serendipity. It would be the unexpected happening when I least expect it. So, for instance, I come out of prison and I don't drink. I don't drink not because of any religious reason. I just don't like drinking that much. I might drink 3-4 times a year, if that. And the one time I drink when I come out of prison was New Year's Eve, and drinking some champagne. I've got drunk. It takes me a whiff of alcohol gets me drunk. So anyway, I got drunk very quickly, and I met the most amazing woman who is culturally amazing. She's a special educational needs coordinator, so she understood where I was coming from. But before even I knew my own journey, she just understood everything. When I just briefly explained my life, she thought, she got it. And we fell in love. We went and visited she took me to all the amazing places she loves in London, so her amazing museums and the churches she loves, and etc. And just took me, and it was lovely. And then she told me we were going to be parents. We were going to be parents as she was pregnant, I should say. And, I had nothing then. When I mean nothing, I was living out of a homeless hostel, honestly. And the homeless hostel is rat-infested homeless hostel. But I knew in my heart that I'm going to be honest and take myself where I need to be, and crime is done. And the hardest thing in my life was just convincing her that's true. It was just like, you got your life sorted, you own your own property, you've done you're sorted. I want you to know that if we have this baby, I'm not going to leave you high and dry and just be like some one of these maniacs. That what you see is what you're getting. And, you know, I was a good salesman. I won her over, and we had our most amazing son, Adam, and that was it. You know, that was both the anchor and wind in my sails that I needed. You know, he kept me grounded, but also propelled me forward. You know, he just like, okay, I can go through poverty because it's for him. I can go to the charity shops and buy clothes for myself because it's for him. You know, it's things that were alien for me before, things that I couldn't even contemplate. They would have drove me into a prison cell, you know, literally. And now, just now, actually taking pride in it, thinking, you know what, bloody hell, like, for something to be really true, it has to grow organically and authentically. And I thought, I'm just going to throw everything at it. So I applied to go back into education again. I've done 2 years of a higher national diploma in business management and entrepreneurship. And then that allowed me to do a top up to go to university. And then I got a university degree. So I got a degree in business management and entrepreneurship. In between that, I was on the board of trustees of my student union. And again, you know, it's tying back to the work I did in prison. I'm supporting my peers. And then I think it's actually symbolic, because I think when I left secondary school, it's because I couldn't cross over that threshold because I felt so embarrassed. But when I walked into the classroom at university, I thought, actually, I hold my own in it. Actually, I'm okay. Actually, I can hold a discussion. I've got a lot of knowledge behind me. I've read a lot. You know, I've got a lot of insight, and I thrived in it, and I loved it. And I thought, actually, I'm just gonna. And at the time, I didn't think where it's leading to. And to be honest, actually, one of my main intentions of applying for it is my only source of money, because you get student finance. So I was able to get some maintenance money from the government that allowed me to just enough to give my partner enough money to contribute. It was just enough money to contribute towards the rent, but enough where I'm not sitting there in shame thinking, oh my God, I'm just living off this woman and, you know, she's providing for me, I'm not contributing. So it was enough for me to do that. And then at the end of it, I hit the biggest brick wall, because even though I had a degree, I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get a job stacking shelves. You know, I couldn't get a job stacking shelves. I was applying for jobs at Amazon, couldn't get a job. Amazon said they don't apply anyone with convictions. The irony of their CEOs but let's not go there. So that was really hard. And I reached out to an amazing charity called Project Remake. And, you know, the founder, when I first spoke to the founder of Project Remake, Dr. Camille Khan, I should say, I just felt the authenticity coming from him. I thought, this man gets it. I really had a distrust of charities up at that point. I've dipped into a few of them. All of the ones I saw in prison were just there for tick box exercises. They had no interest in me personally, no interest in what I was doing. So I thought, actually, apart from SHP, Single Homeless Project, the ones who got me in the hostel, got always eternal love for them. And, you know, Project Remake, it's an entrepreneurial skills training program for ex-prisoners. Well, I've just finished a degree in business management, entrepreneurship, really ideal for me. And also I got it, what they're trying to do. I understood what they're trying to achieve. And I went on a program, I completed it, I thrived. Initially, my business idea was, and I hope someone out there who's struggling steals this idea, because it's really a good idea, and I'm going to do it one day. If you get there before me, I'll be really happy. It's making freshly made air fried crisps from a market store. Everyone eat crisps. You lot call them chips. We call them crisps. But anyway, freshly made air fried chips. It's weird saying that. Freshly made air fried chips from a market store. Everyone eats chips. Everyone likes organic stuff. These are healthy. They're air fried. They're organic. You can have hummus, tzatziki with them. Anyway, I had that. It was called Camden Crisp. It was beautiful. It was an amazing company. I still want to start it one day. But anyway, I didn't have no money to start that. What was I fooling myself? Jesus. So I thought I was able to get a job off the back of Project Remake, because at that time then a company called Capita worked with Project Remake. They had a partnership, Project Remake, a part of their social value commitments. And a part of that was anyone who graduates from Project Remake is eligible to apply for a job at Capita. I did, and I was able to get on a 3-month apprenticeship. And after that 3-month apprenticeship, I worked my ass off, to become social value manager of the Turing scheme. And it was just like, wow, like this scheme here is like, if I was going to create a scheme, it would be this. The Turing scheme is a scheme to support underprivileged people to build cultural capital by giving their educational providers, schools, universities, the money to take them on board. And wow, you know, anyone who's ever been aboard knows how transformative it is. And if you go outside your resort, but if you actually travel within a community, like, it's transformative. Again, with books, I think books and traveling, and it was beautiful for me to be a social value manager from where I've been, and now to know the impact something like this can have. And I come on today, it was a very difficult job. There was multiple commitments, some of them ginormous, and I completed them all, flying colours. I completed all of the commitments, supported 312 underprivileged people through that program. But when I completed Project Remake, I volunteered with them for 3 years, and still am. And for just coming up to 3 years being supported Project Remake, and again supported dozens and dozens of the people who've been in the program, as a peer mentor. So just sharing my own experiences, supporting them through the program. I've done that for 3 years, and I recently was made redundant, funny enough, from Capita. Going for a job interview tomorrow. I won't say the employer just in case they let me down. I don't want to embarrass them. But anyway, I'm going for a job interview this week around social values. So I hope so. And I've also started up my own company called Anna Branch Plus.
Yes.
And I think, please.
Let's talk about. So I mean, it's an incredible journey you've been on in so many ways. I just want to point out that you've been in a position now where you've been able to volunteer at Project Remake for 3 years, right? You weren't volunteering before. You weren't able to volunteer. Now you've always had this entrepreneurial, whether you saw it or not, you've always had this entrepreneurial side to you. You've developed those skills. Then you've gone and gotten the education to say, I have an education in business and entrepreneurship. And today you've started I'll call it another. You've started another business in line with your mission today. So tell us about that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I would say, what does Anna Branch do? And I never knew that. It took me months to try and figure out a name for it, because I understood what I wanted to do, but I understood the name. I really wanted the name to really symbolise what we're doing. And, and Anna Branch is part of a river that breaks away from the main course, only to reconnect with it further downstream. And I feel like that encapsulated my own journey. And also, people have been, through the criminal justice system, they've been removed from society, and they're being reconnected with further downstream. And we're the plus. We're the driving force to really help people reconnect with that. And how that is done, I think I've tried to replicate really what worked with me, and I've seen what worked with other people, and through research, and through just working with some amazing people. And it's done through workshops that I've built. So we've got 4 areas of workshops, actually. So one of them is under our Empowerment Academy, and that focuses on our life and living skills. So one of our workshops is overcoming imposter syndrome and navigating social perceptions. And that is the two key things. It's the internal and external, people, how they feel, and also how society perceives them. That's an amazing workshop. I've got some that focus around personal branding, communication, conflict management. And then we have our Digital Bridges series of workshops that is really a foundational introduction to Industry 4.0, digital skills, etc. How to operate in a virtual workplace, etc. Things like that. And our employability workshops, which have a plethora of just amazing employability workshops. But then we are hopefully delivering this year our Empower Her Future program, which is a 6 week program which is focused around empowering female prison leavers. Now, I'm a male prison leaver. I've never been to a female prison, so I'm not coming with a presumption that I know what they're coming with, because I know they come with a whole different challenges and the background that I've not been through. So I have worked with some amazing women who's both work in the area of supporting female prison leavers or female prisoners, and those who have been to prison, and just help and building something that is really focusing around the issues that they're dealing with now. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to be that bridge between the public and private sector. And what I'm trying to do is, because there's so much resource and there's so much expertise in the private sector, that if you can bridge it to it just be amazing. And I think we can be that conduit in the middle, just really that real life, pragmatic approach to supporting people, that whole society holistic approach. And that's through mentors, peer mentors. So how it will work is we have one, if we deliver a workshop, we have myself or someone facilitating it. We will have a peer mentor who's someone got lived experience, and 2 business mentors. And just having that really one-to-one thing, go jump in the breakout rooms. And the main goal, what I'm trying to do, and I'm hoping people listen to it, is really jump on board and help me support and trying to help people get jobs, either that's through your company, if you've got jobs going, and we can try and help people get jobs. It's either helping us facilitate some of your contracts, which is get some welcomed income into the business, and also it's maybe get into partnership with us into what we're doing. This is something very unique. This is a different approach to rehabilitation. It's something that needs to be done I believe and I know that once it gets the right investment and all the right contracts involved and it gets that financial boost, that we are going to be in a different position. We're going to be able to support people in ways that have not been done before, and because I'm focusing on the areas that no one else is really caring about. So for the cultural barriers are holding people back. How are you defined in your community? And how do you break away from that definition? And how do you transfer that into a new community? And to me, it's volunteering. Volunteering is free, but volunteering gives you opportunities. And I'm really careful because a lot of people want to exploit that. Volunteers are exploited like I was exploited. I'm very cautious about advising people just to always go down the volunteering route. But there's ways that you can get involved within your community to build trust within your community. And a lot of people have broken the trust within their community. And there's charity. So there's many ways. And in the workshops, we focus a lot on that. We focus on, I think, the foundational digital tools. So one of the workshops is Industry 4.0 and career readiness. It's predicted that 300 to 800 million jobs are going to be displaced by 2030. And it's you're seeing it amongst it, and why shouldn't we be prepared for that? Let's upskill people. So I think the first step in the way is to make people, one, be aware this is happening, and two, fall in love with this transformation. Don't be afraid of it. There's opportunities for upskilling, and how does that look, and what pathways can we create to lead people into higher education, apprenticeships, trainings, work placements, etc. And I've got a professor, I've got an author of a book. I wouldn't say the author of that because he's not given permission yet, but he's wrote a book around, just on Industry 4.0. He's a professor in Industry 4.0. He's one of the world's leading experts, and he's on board to help me facilitate some of these Industry 4.0 workshops, which is transformational because it's not just about telling people that they're seeing it through an expert. I feel like I'm rambling.
No, I think it's incredible. I'm going to ask some clarifying questions. Don't worry, but I think it's an incredible mission. You pulled out. I'll be honest. So many of the workshops, so much of the content you pulled out, I thought, does this have to be for prison leavers, or can it be just for the general public? Because there's so many important skills that you're covering. There's so much that you're harnessing from. Depending on everybody's story is different, but depending on their background, for you personally, you would be harnessing skills that you had developed. You just hadn't applied them in a positive way yet. But I think you've taken this really important philosophy of, research-based philosophy of, when we look ahead, so many of the careers are changing. So many, why aren't we getting people prepared for what is coming in the future, showing them that opportunity, letting them be leaders in that? So I think you're actually offering a massive advantage. You did point out some key areas that you need support for this to continue to succeed. Is this intended? So is this a program that you can bring into prisons? Is it for people transitioning out of prison? Who is it for, and at what point in their journey?
For both. It is for both. And I think it would be tweaked. For each one would be tweaked, and maybe different aspects would be applied to it. I think in prison would be a lot more preparing them for release, because I think the problem we have with prison is people's heads are in the clouds. That's easy for them to make a plan, but it can really come asunder when you come out. So I think when you're getting people, when they're outside, they're a lot more pragmatic about their situation and actually realise the real world here hasn't worked out greatly. So I think you're getting them in different positions, but also in prison you're getting them at their most optimistic. Funny enough, another oxymoron, they're in prison but they're most optimistic. When they're outside, they're not their most optimistic.
Interesting.
It's about understanding how can we reach them and how can we build an optimism. And I think it's the continuity of making sure that drive and passion is carried on post-release, and that goes on to any clients we have. I wish that this is a for-profit business, but at the same time it is, and I hate to say the word because it sounds so cliche and it sounds so liberal. It is a social enterprise, but a true social enterprise. This is something that is really, it is true, it is grassroots as it can get. But I think the key thing, what I forgot to mention, one of the activities we have on the imposter syndrome workshop, overcoming imposter syndrome, navigating social perception, is the reframing techniques. The key, the fundamental aspect of everyone is reframing your situation, like in a way that I did. Like when I talked about my time in prison, I didn't talk about my time sitting there looking at the door. I talked about my time and the work I did in prison. I was able to reframe it into a positive experience. And I think that's the key thing. There's stuff, and anyone that I'm in prison, I advise them, because one of the things that I'm most proud of on my LinkedIn is being a the BME and foreign national rep in prison. That is the one thing I'm most proud of. Because when I was at the coalface of social value, nobody can come and tell me, because I know, I've lived it, I've seen it. So one, I get a lot of pride in that, in the work that I did. And also, this is the beacon. This is like, wow, this is like, I've been there, I've seen it. I was a prisoner, but a foreign national representative doing it. So I know exactly what's going on. So now when I'm doing this, anything that I'm creating, any workshops, I have the confidence to know that actually, it might need to be tweaked. Feedback is key. So anyone working, feedback is always recommended, but I know that it's going to do what it's going to do.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I have to tell you, as I'm listening, I think these are incredibly transferable. I see value in these skill areas, these topics broadly. Now, you mentioned it's a for-profit, and that's a piece that you're working on between contracts and getting it funded.
Yeah.
You mentioned early on you've seen so many charities just not do what they should have done. Why isn't this a charity? If I didn't just answer it,
no,
100%.
It's a valid question. One, what my mentor kept telling me. One, there's no reason why you shouldn't make money, so don't be embarrassed about saying that. So one is to make money, to provide for my family.
Of course.
Secondly, and I think just as importantly, but if not more importantly, I understand that we live in a capitalist system. Money makes the world go round. Shouldn't always, for collaboration, in my opinion, is equal to money. So but I understand if I want to get the best people involved, then it has to be for profit. So charities are limited in the amount of time they can get people to resource them. And if I really want the best of the best, it has to be a for-profit. And I understood if I open up a charity, I'm going to have to rely on so for instance, when it's school holidays, I'm not going to be able to get someone for a charity. It's gone. They're on holiday. But if I'm paying somebody, they might actually, it's worth it for them. And I don't feel like I'm saving the state and the taxpayer money. And that's the thing. That this small amount of money they're spending on the workshops compared to oh my God, it's immense the amount of money we use just even housing people in prison, let alone the policing, the court costs, social services, the impact on the community, insurance costs. What is the sense of your safety? What price do I put on that? It's priceless. So we're actually reducing it. So it's a very unique service that it's helping everybody. Yeah. And I think it's really, and that's the hardest thing that I have is selling that, is letting people see actually beyond the tick box that some people might come to me and go, look, we've got commitments and we just need to get bums on seats. I understand it, but I want them to know actually this is more than bums on seats. That I would never ever do that anyway. I'm not here to half measures. So if you want to come and you want it, the impact would be immense anyway. And we do impact reports. I work with some amazing companies who do impact assessments for us. So it's, and I understand what people need. And the goal is to have this. And just to go back, actually, when I started this, my initial idea was to have a hub of bringing everyone together. And really, this is a collective. It's not Omar's dream. This is not my dream, and it shouldn't be. But it was me seeing the wealth of experience. One, the people helping me, and also just these organisations and individuals that are doing a lot of work siloed. But if we can bring everyone together around one cause, one workshop, it would just be immense. I understand the power I have from mentoring. I've seen it firsthand. The work that I do with people, it's just to give an example. I've been supporting an amazing young woman for nearly 2 years, and for a lot of stuff, and I was really humbled that she asked me to be part of her social services family assessment, with basically her nearest and dearest be a part of really intimate information, and because she has one she trusts and she values, and I would never agree to something that I can't do, and I've always said I'm there as a sounding board. I'm there if you're ever emotionally down. This is something that I've taken out of my own. It's not, no one paid me to do this. Yes. It's just I understand actually she has nobody that I have to live and breathe this. I can't be one of them people saying if I'm not being paid for it, I can't do it. I could never be one of them people. But I understand the business is separate. But and what I do hope, and this is the great thing I think for anyone listening, Carrie, is that every workshop that we deliver has someone who's been to prison playing a part in the delivery. So there's someone's making money who's been to prison.
Yes.
So it's not, we are actually not just supporting people, we're hiring ex-prisoners and we're putting them through the process, and that's transformative because again, people in the workshops are not only seeing me, a one trick, just thinking actually it's always Omar. It's actually every week you've got someone else coming who's been to prison, who's been through some external. And I always said I want my peer mentors to be paid the same as the business mentors. It's because what they're bringing is a wealth of experience that no one can replicate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the goal of a lot of, so anyway, I hope I'm making sense.
It's an incredible journey, and it's I really admire the way that it's been organized and pulled together and supporting the community while leaning on the community. So I can see an immense amount of value there. And I hope the conversation we're having today is helping to build this incredibly important business for you.
Thank you, Gary. Oh, I hope so.
Before we wrap up for today, I want to ask you, you have a lot of lived experience, you have a lot of wisdom there, you have a lot that you've gone through. So I want to bring out some life lessons, some advice for people listening, and I want to ask a few questions around there. One is, what advice do you have for younger, I know you're a father, what advice do you have for younger generations?
I would say immerse yourself in everything that's outside of your comfort zone. And I would say, understand that whatever you plan for may end up differently, but that differently could be better. And
I love that.
And the key one is no pressure, no diamonds. You don't get no diamonds without no pressure.
Absolutely.
And looking back, I've explained my life. I don't know if I've done it correctly. There's been points in my life that, at the moment, especially when I went to prison last, that I could never imagine this would be anything but a negative experience for me. But then looking back, it was the best experience. So even when you're going through a difficult period, a difficult time, it's time to grow. There is opportunities to grow for it. There's opportunities to learn, and always know that you're going to look back on these times, and half the time you're going to laugh at them. You might cry, but you'll be in a different place. And like I said, I started Project Remake to sell organically air-fried potato chips. That was my bit. And now it's Anna Branch Plus. So it went around the houses, and along the way I didn't know what I was going to do. I have a son to provide for, and I felt like my back was against the wall. But you find your way. It's that you've got to be in it to win it, and just don't give up on yourself. Don't feel. And the key thing, what I would say too, don't be embarrassed about feeling embarrassed, and don't have your head in people's heads too much. Don't worry about what people. Do you know what held me back mostly in my life? Worried about what other people are thinking about me. And the deep thing was, and you know what I figured out, Carrie? It was what I would be thinking about them. It's not what, right? and it was more about me, and it was a negativity in towards me. And it was me superimposing it on other people's, and it was just weird. And I think, just don't be afraid about getting it wrong. And the one, and again, I'm rambling it, but I think
this is excellent.
It's when I went to Capita, and it was a breath of fresh air. And these are some amazing people I really looked up to, and I still look up to and respect. And they said, "Oh, you got to fake it to make it." And when I come into this, I didn't know half the things, but you stick at it. You get to live and breathe this. You get to learn things along the way. And it's very easy for us to make ourselves feel like we're an imposter or everyone else is better than us. And it's, but you just stick at something and go through that feeling of embarrassment, because that's what helped me. And I can only say what held me back, and it was things. And I can and I hope my ramblings do help somebody.
I hope so too. Those are incredibly important pieces of advice, life lessons, pieces of wisdom that you have learned because you've lived them, which was exactly what I was asking. And I do think they're going to speak to people that are listening. I want to ask, so you've learned this, you've told us some of the experiences that you've had, maybe some of the hard lessons learned, maybe some of the failures turned into development, turned into growth. You've talked to us about how you have a very, very mission-driven work today, and how personal it is to you, and how it is a social enterprise. You have tools within that work to help people, right? Workshops, learnings, skill building, all of these tools that people can actually use. I want to go back to a bit of a bit of a personal question and ask, how do you, and this is going back from the very beginning. You've talked about emotional aspects that you've gone through in your family life, obviously, having wins in crime, having extreme, I'll call it losses, having the other side. How do you nurture your mental and emotional well-being? Personally, right? Because it sounds like something you've put a lot of effort into.
It's a good question, actually. when I was in prison, actually, I had cognitive behavioural therapy, and that was great because that was the first time I actually ever spoke about the things I'm speaking about now. You know, it was the first time I ever in my life spoken about anything personal. You know, it was never did it to anybody. You know, so that was amazing. And then when I come out of prison, I was at university. I went to I reached out to the wellbeing because it was a bit stressful during COVID and felt like I was back in prison again, being lockdown. So I reached out to wellbeing, and I done TFF, I forget what it is now, but it's a tapping type of therapy. It's like cognitive therapy, but you're tapping key points. TFT or something like that. I forget what it is. But it's amazing therapy, and she was an amazing woman. And we were just doing that. So that was like cognitive therapy. That was great. But I think, do you know what? I think I do a lot of online gaming. That is therapeutic for me. And I think what that allows me to do is, funny enough, it's to, you know, the adrenaline I used to have in the criminal world. It was very addictive. But I kind of,
right.
You know, so when I play games, I kind of get that rush and that kind of control kind of thing. So it's, I think it's really overlooked, or underlooked, I should say. You know, but online gaming was really key because that gives me an outlet for that kind of like that immature side of me. That kind of like a bit reckless, and just like actually I can play a few games of my game is Battlefield 2042, and it's like I absolutely love it. I love the whole Battlefield franchise. I've played it my whole entire life. Everyone likes Call of Duty, and because I'm kind of iconoclastic, so I'm kind of anti-establishment, anti-culture. So it's like everyone wants Call of Duty. Well, I'll go and get I'll go and get its rival one, and that'll be my game. And it's just like I'm stuck with it.
I love it. All right. I think this will be my last question. Speaking from today, speaking from everything you've built, all the growth that's happened, what would you like your legacy to be and why?
Oh my God.
I know, it's a big one.
You know what? I would think, obviously, I know it's going to sound cliche. Obviously, my son is it's my legacy. But I think it's just change can come in the most unexpected places. I think it's just. And I think, you know, if I was going to say anything, it would just be an image of a rose growing out of a concrete slab. You know, it would be that, you know, and that's how it feels. I honestly, never in my life, I honestly thought, Carrie, that I was either going to die or go to prison for life, or just do something so silly and dangerous that I would just lose myself entirely. And it was to be doing it, and it feels like different stages, and I'm rambling a bit now, but I feel like I've lived my life. I feel like I've lived multiple lives. So when I think back to my time when I was in Kilburn, when I was 9 and committed my first crime, I walked them streets very lonely. It was a very lonely period in my life, very lonely.
Yeah.
And when I was in my teens, I was very angry and frustrated, and you know, when I was in my 20s, I was very manipulative and cunning, and when I was in my 30s, I was a lot more mature. And now, you know, it's different stages, and I think, you know, it's yeah.
Beautifully put. I mean, the image, I mean, you've given us a physical image of a rose kind of growing through I'm picturing kind of concrete and rough, you know? Exactly. And then just kind of giving us by decade the emotional journey of the growth and change. So I think it's a beautiful way to end the story. You've talked about your son at multiple times being that motivation for change and being that, you know, that beacon that continues to keep you focused on where you're going, and he is and will be your legacy. So just a beautiful story. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to share it with us today.
It's been amazing, Carrie. Thank you. Thank you for having me and allowing me to share it. It's I hope it has an impact on people. Thank you.
I do too, and I believe it will. Any last words that I didn't ask you about or that you want to share before we close?
Just all I would say is this: is that when I was in prison, and this is the truth, I would say 80% of all the people in prison are the most broken, most vulnerable, most, you know, just disenfranchised people in our whole communities. And there are 20% I would say that are criminal minded, but the vast majority of people in there are broken people. So when you think about people in prison, I think just understand it's the most broken individual in themselves, and they're lost. And you know, the more that we change perception and the narrative behind this, you know, it's our society will only benefit. You know, it's for selfish reasons. It benefits us. You know, so let's work together. Let's make this happen.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You've been listening to another episode of AudioLife Memoirs today. I've been your host, Carrie Purcell, and we've had the pleasure of speaking with Omar Mentesh today. I hope you all enjoyed, and we'll be back with another story in a couple of weeks.
If you like what you heard today, consider recording your own AudioLife private podcast or giving one to a loved one for a unique and memorable gift. Today, AudioLife listeners will receive 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. Also, remember to rate our show and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.